Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here. Joni and I will introduce ourselves momentarily, but we wanted to let you know that we're going to take you through a Marie Kondo approach to designing or redesigning your accelerated online courses. And we'll tell you what that is in a moment. So here's a really lovely quote from Marie Kondo. She is known for her work on decluttering. She's a Japanese author who is an organizational specialist. Imagine what it would be like to have a bookshelf filled only with books that you really love. Isn't that image spellbinding? I'd love to see maybe a thumbs up if you actually have heard of Marie Kondo, read any of her books, or watched maybe her TV show she has now on Netflix. Yes, good. So we're somewhat familiar with who Marie Kondo is. So this is who we are. I'm Alexis Stoddard. I'm an instructional designer at the University of Colorado, and I'm also a doctoral student who's focused on researching how to best design and deliver online accelerated courses. And I'm here with Joni.
Well, it's a good thing that that's what your research is about, Alexis. Since we're talking about that. Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna Dunlap, and I'm a professor of learning, design, and technology in the School of Education and Human Development at CU Denver. And Alexis and I have been working together on this topic and a few other topics related to online teaching and learning. And I'm very happy to be here with you today to talk about this. I'm a super fan. I saw super fan of Marie Kondo. Me too.
I'm a super fan of Joni, so we're all in good company. So today we're going to take you through some background as to why we chose this topic and how we arrived to the idea of needing to go from tidying up our homes to actually tidying up our courses. And then we're going to actually apply some of the tenets, 5 of the tenets that Marie Kondo spouts in her KonMari method approach, and then apply it to an actual course redesign that Joni and I have gone through for a full semester course on creative designs. So instead of, when we talk about accelerated courses, we think of these full semester long courses that we have to deliver in a shorter time frame. So often that is summer course. Like for us at CU Denver, we go from 16 weeks to 8 weeks in the summer. We're still meeting the same learning outcomes, want to deliver the same objectives, and we're adding these type of courses year round at CU Denver. And a lot of universities and community colleges are, because it helps get learners through the material faster. Often you are focusing on one course at a time instead of multiple. And so it's so it's a very nice it's a very daunting way, I'd say, for a lot of faculty to get started in redesigning. So we'll go through all of that and relate it to Marie Kondo's approach. And then we'll end with some nice conclusions and takeaways for you. So if you haven't noticed, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. Perhaps this image looks familiar to you. This is Marie Kondo in her lovely, spacious, simplified home. So I know for me and Joni, once we decided or realized we had to work remote all the time, we wanted to make those home spaces as comfortable as possible, especially with the whole family working at home. So a lot of attention was paid to, what do I want to appreciate about the space that I am existing in, basically 24/7. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to unmute them yourselves or type in the chat some of the ways that you have decluttered your surroundings during this pandemic. Yeah, we also have some of those condensed winter terms, and Maymester terms are often those short 3 weeks. Hiding your clutter. Is that just like strategic positioning on your Zoom camera? I like the email auto routing too that Aubrey mentioned earlier. Yeah, even just being more conscious about what you bring into your space. Oh, that's so nice. Yoga and Zoom. I also teach fitness classes at home in my living room. And so I'm very conscious of what is the space that I'm presenting to the rest of the world. But then I've realized like I want to live in that space too. So no more work clothes. I'm wearing jeans right now. I don't know where my dress pants are. So nice. So there's been a lot of, I think, shifts in thinking about how we live in the spaces that we work from. Another, I think Marie Kondo is full of many really nice quotes. And she also says, once you learn to choose your belongings properly, you will be left with only the amount that fits perfectly in the space you own. And this is some of our challenge when we're redesigning a course that has traditionally been offered in 16 weeks. It accumulates a lot of extra stuff. And if you've been the one who designed it or are teaching it, it's really hard to let go of a lot of that stuff. So another show just a thumbs up or some sort of signal if you actually do teach or have designed accelerated courses, these time condensed courses. Awesome. And if you haven't yet, you probably will someday. They are ever growing and expanding. And we know a lot from accelerated courses from the literature, but it's mostly face to face. We know a lot about online courses from research. See the community of inquiry represented here on our slides. That's the social, cognitive, and teaching presence. But we don't know as much about how to best combine the two. And that's exactly what my doctoral research is exploring. So the trick that we know is in face-to-face accelerated courses, the condensed time frame creates a very strong social component. You're in the same physical space for more hours, more days of the week usually. But we don't have that same benefit built into online accelerated courses. The research and our experience, we do know that having that feeling of community is so crucial online, but it has to be built in more intentional ways. There's just simply less time to do it, and we don't have the natural, like before class, after class, we're hanging out, we see each other's body language, but all those feelings of community help with student persistence. Cognitive presence is very crucial too. We want to create content that connects to real world applications. It helps keep learners motivated. And it's really important for helping learners to identify and recognize what they know or don't know or need to know. And so these are some of the ways that have come up in thinking about how do we combine accelerated and online courses. We want to make sure that we are giving homage to the learner's real world experiences and the applications that they could benefit from. And then teaching presence probably is what dominates in the world of accelerated online courses for good reason. By streamlining your expectations through the clarity of instructions or navigation or giving very specific feedback to help learners improve on future assignments, that is going to more efficiently help learners reach those outcomes. Again, you just don't have a lot of time. So lots of information on how to maybe ideally design your courses. And part of this is a form of decluttering. We want to make sure we're focusing on the learning outcomes and getting rid of some of those extra materials that just don't carry us forward in the best way, especially when we have no time to lose. So we're going to take this idea and relate it through Joni's redesign of her course to Marie Kondo's 5 approaches, these 5 tenets when it comes to tidying up. And we refer to this, she calls it the KonMari method. And so that's where this name comes from. So for many of us, thinking about how to declutter our homes is very familiar. It's a very easy to follow sort of approach to tackling this daunting task. And so we want to use some of those ideas in helping you approach a redesign of your course, especially when condensing it into a smaller time frame. It's going to be a big shift. It's going to be a change and a shift in mindset and a shift in your reality. It's not easy, but trust us, it is very much worth the journey. So with that, let's get started with tenant number 1.
So the first big piece of advice that Marie gives us is to clear out the space and start from square one. And I'm sorry, Alexis, since you're controlling things, if you could advance us, that'd be great. Thank you. And we're using her quotes throughout just because we found them so inspirational. And actually, the quotes themselves gave us ideas as to how to approach each of the tasks that we were going to undertake as part of the decluttering effort for the course. And so this lovely quote, "It's easy to get rid of things when there is an obvious reason for doing so. It's much more difficult when there's no compelling reason." And this is certainly my story, because during, as Alexis mentioned, and you all shared, that during the pandemic, I know that in my own household, we suddenly were 4 people all doing either school or work online via Zoom, in the same physical space. And so we really needed to rethink that physical space. And so it seemed like a lot of you sort of went through some of that as well. But it also was, I already had a compelling reason, if you will, using her language, a compelling reason for thinking about the application to my own courses and my course redesigns, is that I had agreed to take a course that I've been teaching for years in a 16-week regular semester. And I had agreed to teach it in our summer term, which is 8 weeks. And that's happening in just a couple of months. And so there was this very pressing need for me to actually take a look at the course and see what needed to happen in order for it to be a very positive experience for students in 8 weeks, but also equitable in terms of any comparison that might happen between the ongoing 16-week version and the new 8-week version. And so this sort of just gives you a quick layout of those 16 weeks. And I have the 16-week course, had the 16-week course divided into 4 major components. The first 5 weeks are around really encouraging people to embrace their creative spirit and work with various tools and various ideas, sort of getting ready for applying all of those creative approaches to the next 2 big projects, one on a 4-week project on creating a presentation, another 4-week project on creating an infographic, and then the final weeks on pulling it all together, sharing it, celebrating it, doing any final revisions, and so on. Pretty typical structure for me. So my initial thinking, and the reason why I said, of course I can do this in 8 weeks and agreed to teaching it, was I had thought, I'm just going to cut the time in half. You know, I sort of use the idea of, in the summer, typically people only take 1 course at a time, and in a fall or spring term, they'll take 2. And so it'll be okay if I just squish everything into the shorter time frame, because there won't be the competition of a second course for students to work with. And so I just sort of in my mind went, okay, instead of 5 weeks, the first part of the course, well, I can do that in 2 or 2.5 weeks. And then each of the major projects, instead of 4 weeks, they'll be 2 weeks each, and so on. So that was sort of my original thinking. This also sort of influenced my thinking that this was going to be easy as well, was that I had the entire course built already in Canvas at CU Denver. Our learning management system is Canvas. And what I had done is I had created sort of, this should look fairly typical for those of you who work in Canvas or any other learning management system, but I used the module unit structure of the learning management system to set up weeks. And then within each week, I had the activities that were associated with that week. And so thinking about Marie Kondo and her thinking and her talking about rooms, basically I had created multiple rooms within the course. And so I thought, well, since I have this structure already, I'll just copy the course over for summer, and then I'll just sort of collapse weeks together to make bigger units. And then I'll just do some little tweaking and tidying up within each of those collapsed weeks. And that'll all fit into the 8 weeks. All I have to do is go in and change the timeline and the due dates and so on. What I quickly realized in doing that initial thinking and looking at what I had going on in each of the weeks was that that wasn't gonna quite work. And so really looking at Marie Kondo's advice around needing to clear the space, and with Alexis' help in thinking through this as well, I made a difficult decision, which was to start with a blank canvas course shell, set it aside, not even look at it, and empty all of the content from the 16-week course so that I could create piles of items, as she advises. So the second piece of advice that we really embraced from Marie Kondo is that after stepping away from the learning management system, pulling everything out of it and having all of it sort of in one big pile, was to create categories. And so this focus on categories is really important. Alexis, it looks like we lost our presentation.
I know. I was trying to share this article and it disappeared. My whole, let's see, window. This is the joy of having too many things open on your, nope, it's not there. Bear with me.
Well, if you want to stop sharing, I could share my screen.
We'll go for it. I'll get it back.
No, none of that's working.
Oh, are you not listed as a co-host?
I am listed as a co-host, but everyone, could you give me a thumbs up if that's looking correct to you?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So I'm going to get us to that location. And so just a few quotes from Marie Kondo about the second tenet. I recommend tidying by category, not by place. For example, instead of deciding that today you'll tidy a particular room, set goals such as clothes today, books tomorrow. And then this other reminder, it's going to be labor intensive and time consuming, but you need to take all of the books down and put them on the floor. Take them down and spread them out in one area. So you can imagine my thinking about that is that here I already have the course in Canvas, and this is so easy to just copy everything over. Looking at what Marie suggests and taking everything out of that structure off the shelves and putting them in the space, that was very like, oh, do I have to do that? Can't I just tidy up within each week and so on? But I followed the advice with Alexis's help and really did what I was being asked to do by Marie Kondo and stripped everything out of the course shell. I had to come up with the categories then that I was going to use. So you'll note that in Marie Kondo's quote, she talks about, here's your pile of books, here's your pile of coats, and so on. And it seemed like the best thing to do is to go back to the learning objectives. And even if I wasn't approaching this from a Marie Kondo-inspired approach, that seems like a very reasonable thing to start with, is going back to the basics. What were the learning objectives for the course? Has anything changed over time that requires those to be modified, enhanced, updated, and so on? And use them as a guide for what needs to be included in the course, whether it's accelerated or not. It seems like a very helpful activity to go through. And so there were 4 main learning objectives for the course: creative design, learner-centered inclusive design, informed design, and then design decision-making. And because I've been teaching online for quite a long time, I have this other thing that's very important to me, this instructional goal around social presence and community building, having a strong learning community. I have found that to be so beneficial in my online courses, and especially in a course like this around creative design, where I'm asking people to engage in activities in design decision-making that may not be as comfortable as they typically experience. I'm asking them to sort of step out on a limb and do things in a different way, to draw, to hand draw an instructional job aid, for example, for the first time, things like that. And for that to go well, and for it to be a supportive community of people who can do positive peer critiquing and so on, I really invest a lot of time in social presence and community building. So I set that as another category that mattered to me. So I ended up having 5 categories, or 5 piles, that I was going to bring all of the course content and put them into these 5 piles. I'm going to actually walk through my piles for you. And so I'm jumping to a set of tables. And this was the best way for me to represent the idea of piles. So the first round, what I did was, and I'm using the creative design category as an example, that first learning objective as a pile. And that first learning objective actually had 4 components in my mind. It had a creativity component, a visual design component, a storytelling component, and a drawing component. I was asking people in the course to actually explore creative ideas through those 4 categories. And so I stripped out all of the resources and all of the activities and assignments associated with this learning objective that was spread out across the 16 weeks of the course, and put it in these piles so that I could see all that I had. And it was pretty eye-opening to do it this way, as opposed to going week by week and editing within those weeks. I would never have noticed the things that actually I noticed by going through the Marie Kondo-inspired process for this. And so this made a huge difference to my work on the course, for sure. Sort of brings us to the third tenet. which is to choose only those things that bring you joy or have a clear function. And the problem with this course is I love this course and I've been teaching it for quite a while, and I've been adding things and tweaking things every time I teach the course. I typically teach it twice a year, and everything in the course is really important to me, and I love and I think it's critical. And so sadly though, it was hard for me to recognize that it had bloated, if you will, over time, that I had, because I love so many things that I would add things and not let go of things. So there was a lot going on, and creating those piles, for example, really helped me see, wow, I'm doing quite a lot in this particular category. So it was really helpful then to take this next step of going through things, seeing and really thinking about why they have a place in the course. And these quotes from Marie Kondo, I think really help sort of reinforce those ideas: to keep only the things that speak to your heart, then take the plunge and discard all of the rest. By doing this, you can reset your life and embark on a new lifestyle. It's very powerful. And then to cherish the things that are important to you, you must first discard those that have outlived their purpose. So with that sort of mindset in going through the approach, again, I will go back to those tables to show you that what I did next. So here are my original piles. I'm going to scroll down to the second table. And you'll see I started to really see how, these readings have outlived their purpose. They were very positive. When I first started teaching the course, I had challenges letting them go because I valued them so much, but they no longer had the same relevance for what I wanted to achieve in the course. And so I eliminated those. There were activities that I also eliminated for the same reason, that although they may spark joy for me, they had ceased to have the same functionality that they once had. And this was a really helpful process in seeing what needed to be narrowed down and removed. What it also did, as you'll see in bold, I realized by doing this that I thought that I was well addressing the inclusive design learning objective, and addressing universal design for learning well. And I realized that by pulling out the content into these piles, that actually I wasn't doing a very good job in that area. And so it helped me identify some gaps that were really important to me that I wanted to address. And you'll see that that happened in a few places: the gap around learner-centered design, the gap for storytelling, and then a gap of an activity that I really wanted to include as well. This is where Alexis really, she's helped me throughout this process quite a lot. And here was another area that really helped me, is that because I value so much attention to social presence in the building of learning community, during that process of creating the piles, I realized that I had a number of activities that really their sole purpose was that they didn't have a secondary purpose of supporting students' achievement of a learning objective. They really were about building relationships. And so in the movement to an accelerated course and looking for things to declutter and so on, that was one of the things that sort of we put in place as a rule, if you will, is that as an item needed to not only address social presence, spark joy, but it had to also attend to a learning outcome for students. And so that allowed for another way of thinking through the courses, the items within the course. And I'm going to just jump back to the table to show you, scrolling down to the third table. here's an example of what I did then with Alexis's help. Went back through and then outlined the resources and the activities that actually also attended to my social presence pile as well. So you'll see there's quite a lot of things: Zoom sessions, various activities that also address social presence and community building. And I have that going on throughout these underlined activities. So I was still attending to that very important instructional goal, but also at the same time, they served a secondary and very important purpose of helping students with particular learning objectives as well. Keep feelings of nostalgia at bay. If you did any decluttering and reorganizing lately, this is the thing that's the hardest for me. I still have a box in my garage of my parents' yearbooks, for example. It's things that are those items that are not even my memories, but are very hard to let go of. And I'm sure all of us have some of those items in our life. Here's what Marie Kondo says about that. When you come across something that you cannot part with, think carefully about its true purpose in your life. You'll be surprised at how many of the things you possess have already fulfilled their role. And that's this really beautiful idea for me. But I had many items in the course that I felt very nostalgic about. And primarily they were items that had to do with social presence, but some of them were readings, like the original readings that I had people do from Heath and Heath. They were just readings I really enjoyed and really loved. And I had positive memories about them. And it was through Alexis's help, as someone who didn't have any strong feelings about the content of this course. She wasn't involved in the original design. She didn't teach the course. She was able to help me look through these items and really think through, do they really have a functional purpose anymore? And that process with her also helped me to realize that things that I really felt positively about with those readings, for example, or activities I needed to let go of, that actually I was achieving the same goals, the same good feelings for me and for students through other activities and through other resources, making it easier for me to let go of those items. And then this fifth idea from her, and for any of you who watched her videos about folding shirts, for example, this is the tenet that's related to that whole area of her work. And that is the idea of caring for and respecting your belongings. So a couple of quotes that reflect that. The essence of effective storage is this: designate a spot for everything you own. And storage, after all, is the magical act of finding a home for your belongings. So this was actually the part that we've started working on, and actually I'm still working on this, which is that now I started to, with Alexis's help, be able to think about, now how do these things hang together now that I've decluttered my piles? How am I going to restore them? What storage are they going to be in, which is the learning management system, as well as any other instructional platforms that are appropriate. And it's at the process of putting them back into place in a way that helps ensure that they will be used more easily, be efficiently accessed, and so on. And now I'm allowed to go back to the Canvas course shell and start putting things back in places now that I've done this decluttering. And this has been it is a magical act, but this is the part that I've been mostly looking forward to, is the decluttering work, and the reorganizing of those items has been the really heavy lift. And now I'm just feeling real happiness actually about being able to go back and reconstruct a course that I think not only will work well at 8 weeks in the 8-week time frame, but now will also be even better in the 16-week time frame. It is improving what I'm doing this summer, but will definitely improve what I'm doing in the fall with the course as well.
Yeah, and we've had some good questions in the chat, but a nice sort of segue as we wrap up our main delivery is just thinking about your new course design as a fresh start. So when you're trying to make what's worked in 16 weeks work in 8 weeks, it can be really daunting. It's a lot harder to let go than it is to just start with a blank slate. The other idea is around partnering with somebody, and it might be a colleague. I'd love to say it's an instructional designer, but because, as Joni mentioned, there's not that nostalgia, there's not that emotional attachment, it's sometimes helpful to get an outsider's point of view who has those fresh eyes. And the third idea that I would recommend is not rushing the process. I know Marie Kondo talks about how even decluttering your home could be a good 6-month process because we're changing the way we think about something. So I know it's really easy to want to reorganize at the same time we're decluttering. We think it saves time. I'll just like, yeah, I'll get rid of a little here and there. But it's actually adding to more time in the long run because it doesn't take away enough to make it a full shift in thinking. And so something that is helpful, I'd say, is not looking at the learning management system, not thinking about what do I have to take from this pile and move it over to this storage unit. It's a lot harder to get a fresh out of the box perspective that way. And the final, but I think most inspiring part of it all is that there are likely to be ripple effects. And almost everybody I've worked with in redesigning a course for 8 weeks have said that it made them rethink their approach to teaching their 16-week courses. So let this change wash over all of your courses because I think once you're able to let some things go, it's going to be a lot more worthwhile experience for you and your students. And one of these big questions that I know we were talking about in the chat is around how do you convince faculty to let things go, especially you might not have that power, the right power dynamic where they maybe fully respect you or your opinion as an instructional designer. And it's hard when they're the expert in their course and you don't know anything about that course. I always like to bring it back to the learning outcomes. And in our office where I work, we map things visually because I think it helps faculty see exactly what are my topics each week, what are my learning outcomes, and how does each assignment or activity that I'm doing in the course relate to the learning outcomes. So sometimes in their mind, when it all fits together, when you see it on paper, sometimes you realize how crazy it is. It's like, wow, you've got 5 different things for 1 week assigning to the same learning outcome. Like, that's overkill. Or sometimes you can see it's like a tangled web of activities. And when you lay it all out, it's like laying out those piles, you see, ooh, I have a lot, but that's where you need that ability to sort of see it all in one go. But I'm happy to share some resources on like how we do concept mapping with our course designs to really get that good visual overview. Hopefully that helped answer some of your questions. Other ideas or questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hi, it's Sophia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you both. I love you both. Thanks for doing this presentation. So my question is, at one point, maybe right before this final thought slide, you said something about taking your time to do this. My question is, how do you reconcile the time crunch with the need to take it slow? Sometimes you get a new course schedule or a new design assignment about 3 weeks before delivery is needed or duplication is needed. So I want to know what you think about that.
So my first thought is it really is a disservice. I know even at CU Denver, luckily there were some people who pushed back because they're like, yeah, let's make, in case of COVID, let's just make everything 8 weeks so we don't have to have as many people even on campus at the same time. No big deal. And luckily some very intelligent people said, no, 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 no. That's not just like take what you've been doing and smush it down. It's a whole new redesign. So ideally, yes, a lot of messaging needs to go out to administrators and leaders who are making these decisions. But I also know the reality of you may not have that control or that choice. And so it's not maybe an ideal situation. When you do have only a few weeks, I think it still can be something you sit and think about. Okay, so instead of thinking about what you're taking away, what is it that you absolutely need to keep? Look at each objective, look at each assignment, and think about, does this meet the learning objective? Ideally, does it maybe meet a couple, like Joni was mentioning? Well, maybe social presence isn't my learning objective, but I know that this actually helps them demonstrate this ability or the skill that I want them to gain, but it's also doubling as a community building exercise. And I try to think about, do I have a balance of not only are they meeting the objectives, but are they interacting with each other? I want to see some of that social presence. It's huge. And some of it's going to be based off of maybe information I've received from students in the past or from myself, knowing like, yeah, this takes a lot of time. Maybe you can't totally get rid of an assignment or start from scratch, but I think there's a lot you can do to streamline some of the activities or the overall instructions for a piece. Like we might have an activity where we want students to choose a company, make a marketing plan, do research on this company, and create a marketing plan for it, for example. But instead of maybe giving students wide open choice, maybe I vet some of those choices and say, here are 3 companies you can choose from. You're still giving students a little autonomy, but the point of the exercise is not that, oh, I find a company. Like that's not the goal. The goal is, oh, you're making that marketing plan. So I kind of cut out some of that extra time. Again, I could probably talk way too long about this. I don't know if that gives you a little insight, but my heart is with you. It's not an easy lift.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Sure. Oh, and so the question number 2 that I'm seeing pop up is the mapping. So we actually use something called, there's a lot of different ways, but we use an online mapping tool called Bubble US. It's auto-correcting me in the chat. There we go. And so it's a digital, it's very simple, but I like it because I can collaborate. So I can share a bubble map with the faculty and they can type in and I can type in at the same time, kind of like Google Docs. And in some ways, being remote has helped this because I used to sometimes do this together. We'd be looking at the same computer when we were mapping in a room together. Now we just share a Zoom screen and map that way. I know there's probably lots of other questions I've missed. That is a good question. I'm really not 100% sure. And I know we've been looking at some other feature or other digital concept maps. Just because there are a few issues, but we don't share this with students typically. And so, but yeah, that's a really good question. I know we started with it because it was really cheap and we had no money.
I sort of wanted to address the questions from Courtney and Sophia about sort of the backwards then designing back to the 16 weeks, how the 8-week work has changed the 16-week course. And one of the things that was really important in the process was that that both the 8-week and the 16-week course were still with the same rigor, still achieving the same learning objectives, still hopefully providing the same positive learning experience for students, so that the fact that they did it in 8 weeks or 16 weeks would not be something that you would notice in terms of the end products that the students were creating and so on. So it was really important for them to be equitable, because they were always going to, this course was always going to be now offered in both formats, and both of them online. And so the decluttering, I would recommend this for someone who wasn't even trying to shift from 16 weeks to 8 weeks. Just, and whatever your course is, whatever length it is, this decluttering process is really valuable. As I had shared in the beginning, I've been teaching this course for a while, and before every class, every time I would teach it, I would find new resources. I would think of new activities, and I would bring more and more in. And because I loved it all and sort of held the 16-week course as a gold standard for my courses, always had positive evaluations with it. Students always achieved the learning objectives well, that I didn't really take the time to think about, oh, have I done too much? Have I added too much? Is this bloated? And so even if you're not looking to move it to an accelerated time frame, I recommend going through this, even if you did it annually as part of sort of your annual tune-up before you start teaching the course. I think if you did a major decluttering like I'm doing right now, that from this point on, it'll just be minor decluttering. I'll be able to keep up with it. But it's sort of a mindset. And so that whole reworking of the 8 weeks has definitely changed what I'm doing in the 16 weeks. I am not now continuing with the original 16-week version of the course. I am using the 8-week version of the course in 16 weeks, keeping in mind now that students have a second course that they're taking at the exact same time. So things are spread out a little bit more, because of recognizing that there's some competing activities going on for students in the program. But it is this equitably the same course, just in 2 different timeframes. And by the way, if you didn't notice with the with the slideshow, that Alexis has shared all of these great resources that were used throughout. And so hopefully, if you want to dig deeper into anything around the research around accelerated courses, there are some great resources here. And then if you want to, please reach out and contact us at any time. Here are our email addresses. This is, we spend a lot of time talking about it together, and we love to have friends join us in those conversations as well. So be sure to reach out to us. And I can share the link for the slides again right there. Thank you, everyone. It's been such a pleasure to share we are super fans of Marie Kondo, and this was an example of just taking something that was prevalent in our lives for another reason and really seeing the value of it for this kind of work. And because Marie Kondo's work is so familiar and comfortable for people, it's sort of a great way of talking about